Hello and welcome to Bury Our Bones with Cinema, the podcast that is always looking for new ways to say that we love or hate a movie. It is my pleasure to introduce a debutant to the podcast, the stylish Mr. James Webb, the man who puts the wibbly into Wibbly Web. In today's episode, we take a coming-of-age trip into the woods with 1986's Stand By Me. So join us as we run away from an oncoming train, try not to be distracted by the king of cool Kiefer Sutherland, and finally, create some friendships that will live with us forever. This podcast contains spoilers. So Rob Reiner's 1986 Stand By Me is one of those films that I think everybody has to see before they die. It's a movie I saw really quite late on. Like, I've only recently seen this in the past couple of years. It was just, I'd always known about it, but it was never one that I ended up watching until I think about a couple of years ago. And it's one of those films where not a lot really happens, but it tells so much of a story. Like, it's not. Sometimes you get films that have a very clear, defined plot structure where it goes, you do this, and then this, and then this, and then this. And this is more like, it feels like a whole summer, but actually it's just a couple of days.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, obviously directed by Rob Reiner, who we sadly lost last year. And every time I watch a Rob Reiner film, I'm like, Jesus Christ, this guy was so good at making movies.
Yeah,
like
such a run as well.
Yeah. So
in the space of 10 years or something.
I think he started with, well, not started, but I think he had a run of films where it was The Sure Thing, then Stand By Me. Sorry, Spinal Tap, then The Sure Thing, Stand By Me. I'm forgetting one.
Misery
was, yeah, Misery. A few. Oh, sorry, when Harry Met Sally was in between this and Misery.
Okay, yeah.
Then A Few Good Men. And it's like, and it's not just a load of movies. Like, it's not like, I would say, I don't know, like a John McTiernan, which is like action movies or whatever. This is like a real range of movies. You've got documentary spoof of Spinal Tap. You've got romantic love story with The Sure Thing. You've got coming of age drama with Stand By Me. You've then got another romantic comedy with When Harry Met Sally, and then legal drama with A Few Good Men, and horror with Misery. It's like a wide range of movies that ordinarily you get directors who can venture off into other work, but usually they have their forte and that's what they kind of stick to. But Rob Reiner, he done everything, and he was great at everything,
bringing out the acting performances, especially in all of those films. That's the thing that stands out for me, is that the acting's just so good. Yeah,
especially in movies like Stand By Me, where I think I've said it on the podcast numerous times, but one of my pet hates is shit child actors.
Yeah.
And they can break a movie. Like, I think I almost called it Jurassic Park.
I thought you were going to say thoracic. Just talking about the spine of the movie.
So Jurassic Park is one of my, favourite movies, and the kids are all right in that, but they verge ever so closely to that, could quite easily go into annoying phase, and they're just on the right side of it. But there have been movies that are pretty good, and then they're ruined by children, by the child actors, and this is a movie that has four, not quite child actors, but certainly teen actors, and each of them are totally on point. Totally on point. Obviously, you've got the charisma of River Phoenix, who you could see at this point he's going to be. He is essentially to the 80s what DiCaprio was to the 90s.
Oh, absolutely.
And unfortunately, before his tragic death, if he would have gone on, we'd still be talking about him. Oh, what's going to be the next River Phoenix movie? Yeah.
He's just an old soul, I find, in this film. Like, he's just got that gravitas, and that, I think, for me, he's the anchor of the film, even though he's not the protagonist. Because it's such an assured performance.
For someone who's so young, I think he was 13, 14 when this was filmed. Like, he seems like he's been doing it for 20 years. Like, it's so effortless. And I'm not saying, we haven't seen the outtakes, or we don't know what Rob Reiner was having to deal with day to day, but it makes it look so easy. And actually they all do. Like, they all have a form and a function to play here, and they all kind of the chemistry between the four of them feels so real.
Yeah.
Corey Feldman is so good in that kind of slightly wisecracking, geeky, kind of nerdy guy. You've got...
Which he does similarly in Lost Boys.
Yeah,
it's almost like the same character, but he does it so well.
Yeah, in Lost Boys, it's like another push to that kind of like he works in a comic book store. He's so... I think he's also in a Friday the 13th movie as well.
Yeah,
he was the one of the go-to teen child actors that you wanted in an 80s movie, because he was just so assured in what he was able to do. Sometimes you get kids who are like placed into roles and they just don't fit the role, but they've got the right look, or sometimes it'll be, oh right, his mum's the director or whatever, or his dad's the director. But here it's like everybody fits their role so well. Will Wheaton is kind of he kind of sums up for me like America in sort of like the 50s in this movie. He's like good looking kid, but he's trying to find himself. He's not quite a bad kid. He's not quite a good kid. He's just kind of middle of the road kid, middle America type kid, and he just plays it like effortlessly, and then we have Jerry O'Connell, who is unrecognizable, nowadays.
Yeah.
I showed Hannah when we were watching this last night. I was like, who that is? And she's like, no, I don't know who that is. When it's Jerry O'Connell, and she's like, oh, it's that dude, because he is, obviously you can see it when you know, but if you don't know, it's like he looks completely different. And I resonate with his character more than anything with Vern.
He gets the biggest laughs, I think. Yeah.
Like I feel like in a group of friends, I was that kid, slightly chubby, didn't mind making a fool out of himself, but kind of secretly wanted all the others to like him and everything. And I think that's the beauty of this story, is I think so many people can identify with this friendship group in some facet. Like I think we've all had those summers where, this only happens over the course of 2 days, but it feels like an entire summer.
Some holidays.
And that's, when you think back to your summers as a kid, you kind of don't really remember every single day. You remember snippets. And you remember like, the highs and the lows. And this kind of sums up that like so well.
I guess that's that's one of the genres that this film could be categorized as, because it's coming of age, but it's also like a memory movie. Like it's about because the writer opens the film, and a lot of it's maybe slightly like a revisionist memory. Like, so some of it, when it becomes hyper real, I think it's because he's remembering the events in with like rose tinted glasses almost, and like some of it, or like over dramatizing it, because it was Stephen King, based on Stephen King's childhood.
Yeah, so it's based on the novella by Stephen King called The Body, which obviously it's changed its name. And the reason they changed its name apparently is because one of the producers or one of the executives who was kind of funding the movie said it either sounds like it's going to be a Stephen King horror movie, which you can kind of understand, or it was going to be some porno. And it's like that quite quickly says quite a lot about that dude's, like, it's that if that's where you go, that's a you issue more than anything. But so they changed the name to...
And I think also King, like when he wrote The Body, it was autobiographical. So he was Gordy, he was the writer in his group of friends that was like, had aspirations to get out of the small town, and obviously set in Castle Rock, like a lot of his stuff.
Yeah. And I that's one of the things that Stephen King has always been so good at, is that sort of middle America, particularly sort of 50s, 60s, which is such a picturesque time in America's history, where it was like almost, I suppose a lot of probably Americans would call it like the golden years, like the mid 50s to early 60s, where it was apple pie, and
it's like a time capsule. Like the scene we're watching now is Gordy's going into his older brother's bedroom that's not been touched since his brother died, and it's got like posters of Babe Ruth and Buddy Holly. Like really encapsulating that.
And he's so good at sort of, presenting that time in, obviously from him writing it in the written form. And he's had quite a lot of success with his work being depicted on screen in as well. You know, like I suppose the movie that this immediately reminds me of is like, if you take all of the scary stuff out of it, this is what that movie is. You know, it's about 4 friends trying to, you know, find out who they are as people, and
riding around Castle Rock on their bikes.
It's just the same thing. The only difference with it is that there's some weird shape-shifting clown dude, you know, and here one thing I was finding with this is it reminds me a lot of those times where probably every school or every, you know, town had that rumor. Like there was a rumor going around about, oh, don't go to that house because that's where the crazy person lives, you know, or whatever. And up until they find the body, and even then, that's probably a little bit subjective as to whether or not there is a body, or whether or not it's just, as you say, revisionist kind of history. And this is what I remember, and actually did that happen? But up until that point, it's almost the thing of like they're chasing this kind of intangible thing that doesn't really exist. Is it just a rumor? Obviously, we then see a body, so it's a bit more presented, you know, as realistic. But it's that thing of like how many groups of kids would go, oh, you know that scary house at the end of the road, should we go and like try and get inside? How many towns across the country, across the world, have done something similar? And that's why it's so relatable. Is I think we've all probably done that. And, you know, walking late one summer evening, and you go past a scary house, or you go past the road you're not supposed to walk down. It's the same thing. Whereas here, it's obviously presented in a way where it's a bit more of like a mystery and a detective kind of, you know, story arc. And I think, Stephen King has always been great depicting that point in time in a person's life, that coming of age, that point where you're just trying to prolong, you know, the time between being like a proper child and becoming, you know, a late teen and a more responsible individual, you know. And
I think they talk in the film about choosing their options to study, and Gordy wants to stay working in the woodwork classes, metalwork in shop, and Chris is telling him he's got a gift and he needs to be more academic. And it's like, that crossroads in your childhood where, like the rest of your life is dictated by what happens next.
Yeah, and everything in here is so sort of true to life. Obviously, we're just coming up to the scene where, you know, they're just walking down, you know, their town, and they're doing a pinky swear about whatever, and then you see the older kids played by Kiefer Sutherland, and what's the guy's name? I haven't actually got his name here, but Kiefer Sutherland's character and the other dude. And it's, again, we've all got those kids that we didn't want to walk out in front of us just as we're going down the street. You know, those older kids who would prey on you. We've all had that.
Yeah. Well, what makes this scene even more shocking is that's Chris's older brother, not Keith Sutherland, the other one.
Yeah.
Which I always found really shocking that he would let his friend like stick a cigarette in his face. And I remember watching this. I probably saw it in about 88, 89. Yeah. So I was about 9 when I saw it for the first time. My parents would just let me hire any video from the shop, and I saw it with my best 2 friends at the time, Luke and Jake, who are brothers. And I remember having an argument in the video shop because me and Jake didn't want to watch it. We saw the train on the cover. We were like, it's about trains, looks boring. Yeah. And Luke was like, no, my mate said it's really good, we should watch it. So we kind of capitulated it and we took it home, and then we must have watched it about 5 times, I think. Got a late fee for returning it because it just felt like for the first time we were seeing us and our dynamics on screen, and the dynamics between us was similar to the characters. So I was the writer, I was a bit more academic than them, and Luke's gone on to be a blacksmith and his brother's a fencer. So it's kind of, they were Chris and they were Teddy, really. And I was a mixture between Vern and Gordy.
Yeah. And I think so many people who would have watched it around that sort of time in their life would have felt very, very similar. You know, as I said, I watched this not so long ago, so I'm in my 30s. So it perhaps hasn't hit quite the same as it did for you. But I still get the appeal and that, you know, that real sort of like that melancholy sort of feeling of it was such good times when you're a kid and you're doing all this stuff with your mates and you're going into the woods or you're doing whatever it is you do with your mates. But on the same time, you're also a little bit sad because you're like, oh, now I've got to go to work. Now I've got to do X. Now I've got to put the washing on. That's not cool. That's not what you want to do. All the things that you deal with as an adult. There's nothing here. Like the fact that 4 friends go into the woods and none of them think about taking any food. And then they go, obviously it shows the exchange rates when they're like, oh, we've got like just over $2. I'm like, oh, that's enough. And it's like that wouldn't even get you like that wouldn't even get you a bottle of water these days, But that's just like the kind of the fearlessness of that you have when you're that sort of age, where you don't really think about the things you probably should think about if you're going to go into the woods, which is, I do kind of think, obviously we get a little bit as to why the writer, which is Will Wheaton's character Gordy, why he isn't really why his parents don't really kind of like, not necessarily care, but why they don't go, well, he's been gone for 2 days. But there is also a thing of going, well, why are nobody's parents going, they've been gone 2 days? Where are these kids? And I've always interpreted it, since I've watched it a couple of times, I've interpreted it as being, well, okay, it probably is a couple of days, but is it really a couple of days or is it just an afternoon? But because at that age, everything feels so long and everything feels so much bigger. And for him remembering it was a couple of days. But if he was to speak to, his parents and they say, oh, it's only an afternoon, it was only a couple of hours.
Yeah.
That's how everything's like. I can always remember, like in my primary school, we had this massive field out the back of the school, and that would be where you could go in the summertime to, on your lunch break and things like that. Well, I went up to my secondary school, and then I think halfway through the year there was like a primary school event, and we went there. And I remember going back to my primary school field in the summer and being like, this is tiny. And it's only because I'm now in a school which has got a much, much, much bigger field. And it's that thing of, you kind of remember how it feels rather than how it is.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the case here, where they're, the timings and the actual the specifics of the events are probably all a little bit hazy, or all a little bit blurred. And it's probably not 2 days or however long, it's probably an afternoon, and this all happens. But to them it may even feel like, oh, that was the whole summer. Every day they were doing the same thing, and actually they might have only done it like 2 or 3 times. I think, I can remember times where I was like, oh, I remember this summer where I was around my mate's house every single day. And I think, no, I wouldn't have been. It would probably have been like 2 days out of the whole summer. But you just remember the bits you want to remember.
I used to go, my parents would go on holiday without me and my sister, and I'd go and stay with we called them my cousins, but they were my neighbours, Luke and Jay.
Yeah.
And we would, because we lived in the New Forest, so a lot of it was, well, we would recreate the movie as well. We'd go out into the forest and run over the train tracks and do stupid foolhardy like kid things. We'd make pinky promises and spit on our hands and all of this. And now with my memory, I can't remember if we were doing that before we saw the film or we were influenced by it, or a bit of both. Like, I think that's why we loved it so much, was that, yeah, they were just believable characters. I think before this, our favourite films were Grease, which in a way is like set in the 50s, coming of age. So it had a similar kind of aesthetic.
Yeah.
And The Wizard of Oz, which is completely unrelated, but they were the other things we had on VHS on rotation. We found this bit very shocking, this scene where they've got a baseball bat and they're taking out all the post boxes.
Yeah. Well, what I think is really sort of philosophical about this movie, if you kind of want to look at it this way, is that you've got four older friends in the car driving along. Like, this is very much probably, what could be the 4 younger friends in like 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like everybody, they were probably bullied when they were in that early teens by the older kids at the time. And it's got that kind of, that revolving door of, these guys. I mean, Kiefer Sutherland here is like this era of Kiefer Sutherland is like, I said it in my intro, he's the king of cool. Like, something about him where you're just like, kind of scared of him because he's so believable as like this arsehole, beat you up in an instant type guy, but at the same time you're like, he is so cool.
Yeah.
You know, Lost Boys as well is like another extension of that.
Flatliners as well, I think, around this era.
This sort of time. I think he's also in a movie in the 90s called A Time to Kill, which is a completely different movie. He plays this really sort of like hardened racist guy who's accused of killing a girl, I think.
So you feed her to a crocodile or something? Is there a crocodile in it? Or am I getting mixed up? I think I'm getting mixed up with films.
Yeah. And then I think he's then one of his friends who also like helped like kill this girl. He's then shot by the father of, who's played by Samuel L. Jackson. And he's like so despicable in that movie. And it's so believable. Like, Kiefer Sutherland in the late 80s, early 90s was like so like on point with I don't think he's in a bad film from like 85 to like early like 95, like a 10-year period where every film he's in, he just nails it.
Yeah, I can't think of a bad film in that era.
You know, and obviously not so long after the 90s, he's obviously in like 24 and kind of revolutionized TV.
Yeah.
Where I think he might have been like one of the first people, like big Hollywood star, to go into TV. And then obviously 24 was like the box set era of TV where DVDs were just becoming, you know, more household based. You know, they weren't as expensive. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, let's just binge the whole of 24.
Because I think it was on Sky as well. So not everyone had access to that at the time.
Yeah. And it, you know, revolutionized TV. So Kiefer Sutherland is like, you know, and I think it's so easy to kind of just go, oh, he was just a Nepo baby, isn't he? His dad's Donald Sutherland. But actually, he could have just kind of rode on that wave, but he kind of like really did like carve out this kind of niche for himself. Obviously, I don't know if he used that, you know, that particular pull in any way. I don't know.
Might have been to get his first break, but I think he quickly established himself as an actor in his own right, and definitely more threatening than Donald. Donald has a softness about him, but I don't think Kiefer's ever really had that. I can't think of Kiefer in a role where he's soft and cuddly. Yeah. Whereas Donald could do a bit of both. A bit more like haunted.
I think Donald was much better at that kind of threatening as he got older.
Yeah.
You know, in his sort of younger years. Although Invasion of the Body Snatchers, you know, that final shot in that with him is terrifying. You know. But yeah. So I
was thinking more of him being scared in Don't Look Now, and like
Don't Look Now. Great
he's
movie.
Almost like the victim in that, or the ingenue.
Yeah.
This is another bit that I loved when we first watched it. Is they're talking about like Annette's tits getting bigger on the on what's it called, on Mickey Mouse Club. These were the kind of conversations that we'd have as kids, and I'd never really seen this on screen before. Like kids talking like kids, and like their superstitions. They've just tossed the dice and they get in the gooches. And we were quite suspicious as kids as well. Like, don't put new shoes on the table, don't walk under a ladder, don't step on the cracks. And this sense of foreboding now, because that's what I love about that scene, is when they get the gooches, you know something bad's going to happen. Like you just have this feeling. And also with the gun at the start, like the Chekhov's gun, you know that gun's going to come back at some point, and there's going to be a big dramatic moment.
Such a good bit of foreshadowing, because by the time it gets to the point where, you know, he pulls the gun on Kiefer Sutherland, you've kind of forgotten about it, because it isn't really. I don't think it is shown at all again after that point. No. So you forget about it. You know, it's just brilliant storytelling, and it's interesting that this is sort of similar sort of time as a movie like The Goonies, which kind of takes this kind of setup and again goes into a horror kind of genre. This goes into a much more of a coming of age genre, whereas The Goonies goes into that as fantastical kind of genre. But they all kind of sit in the same place in the sense of they're just so effortlessly relatable, because we've all. I don't know how relatable it would be for girls. Perhaps maybe it's more targeted at young boys like we would have been. But it's so relatable. Like even now, like you know, there's a group of friends you've probably got where you're like, you meet them and you just fall back into that.
Yeah,
you know,
definitely.
that same way of like, you know, your teenagers again or your kids again, and You know, I always think of
each
it
other
like,
in a headlock.
Yeah, like my dad, he's got 3 brothers, so there was 4 of them, and it's like, you know, they're unfortunately we lost one of them, but every time they would meet up, it would be like my dad would just turn back into like a teenager, and I could see it because I'm like, oh, he's no longer dad. He's now just like, he's now my uncle's brother, and he's the hierarchy of the brothers now kind of falls into place, and what that is, and
they have this hidden like their secret dialogue. What's it called? Like a lexicon of language.
Yeah.
Only they understand, and these in jokes and things, which is the same in Stand By Me.
Yeah, like I can always remember is at a family function, and one of my uncles, who's the oldest brother. So all 3 of them were always taking the piss out of him because he was the older brother. So he was like the uncool older brother sort of thing. And I think he'd had his haircut or something. And somebody made a comment about, well, don't listen to him. He's got a haircut from the 1940s. And then the worst thing he did about 10 minutes later after everybody stopped laughing is he then turned around and he went, there's nothing wrong with my haircut, is there? And it's like, that's the worst thing to do because you've just told them, you've told them that that's hit a nerve, you know. But just, and I think that just depicts everything that, you know, you have when you have this relationship with people from a young age.
Yeah.
You have that hierarchy, you have that kind of thing of like, almost, I always say it's like with certain people, like nobody's safe from getting the piss ripped out of them.
Yeah.
Because you just know that it's not, nothing's personal. It's just, you're looking for that chink in the armor. You're looking for that way of like, let's make a joke. And all of a sudden you could have been all three of you could have been making a joke about one other person, but then you say something or you mispronounce something or wherever it may, you trip when you shouldn't trip or whatever. And then all of a sudden the roles are reversed. And I think, as young boys, we've all had that situation where, you think you're safe because you're all taking the mick out of, the guy across from you. And then all of a sudden you say something or you do something and then they're all taking the mick out of you and then it flips again.
You become the Verno. I think that's what we used to say to each other was like, just call someone Verno if they've been dumb or if they...
Yeah. And I think this, the hierarchy of these characters, because I think I never really picked up on it, but I read somewhere that there's kind of this implication that River Phoenix's character is a bit older than them. I think that everybody else is like 12, and I think he's potentially 13 going on 14, but he's been held back a year.
Yeah.
So I think that's, it's not explicitly stated, but that's certainly kind of the implication. And it does kind of fit where, probably because of the actual ages of the performers, River Phoenix does seem a little bit older, does seem a little bit wiser.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that, towards the end of the movie, they kind of relay back like where the writer relays back how people ended up, and you'd think that it would be River Phoenix who would end up going to prison and, on the wrong side of life. But actually that turns out to be Corey Feldman's character.
Yeah.
And actually River Phoenix knuckled down and went to college. And, it's that thing of, I always find
but then he gets stabbed.
Yeah.
And splitting up a brawl, which is really tragic knowing what happened to River Phoenix. Like I remember the first time I watched it after River died, that just broke me. And I was such a big fan. Like how could you not be with River Phoenix? Yeah. Like my first window into River Phoenix was watching The Last Crusade and being like, who's that cool kid who's like, oh, he's so cool.
He's like,
his hair, like, everything about it.
It's almost like, I remember when they brought out Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and it was like they had like a young version of Indy, and it was Shia LaBeouf, and it was like, what the fuck is that? And they, that could have so easily have been that moment at the start of Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade. It could have so easily been, who's this? That's not going to work, having a young Indiana Jones. Like, what the hell? But River Phoenix, it just absolutely nails it and smashes it out of the park. But the tragedy and the kind of this is actually like a really sort of tragic movie, not only because of the story it tells, but like I was saying to Hannah last night, I was like, you look back and actually, so obviously, the difficulties that Corey Feldman has and had are quite well known, but also Gordy, played by Will Wheaton, he had quite a lot of, difficulties with abuse and stuff like that in Hollywood. Obviously, River Phoenix, tragically, he's one of the 27 Club, isn't he?
Yeah.
You know,
he died on my 13th birthday, and I was just so devastated.
Yeah.
That's the celebrity death
that's crazy.
affected me the most.
Yeah, and obviously now with Rob Reiner, you know, his unfortunate death, you know, in quite difficult circumstances,
in a violent similar. Well,
and it's like
the way to how Chris dies. Basically.
Yeah, and it's not that life is imitating art or vice versa, but it's that thing of, you know, how time passes and all of a sudden this movie hits differently. Watching it, you know, now 3 or 4 months after Rob Reiner, you know, has died, it's like a different movie again.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, it's so tragic because you do see like the sheer talent on screen. Like at the moment, we just have a nice kind of wideish shot of the four boys in profile as they're walking through the woods, and you're like, to get one actor of any of their caliber is really difficult, and they got 4 of them. It's similar in It, similar in The Goonies, where it's like, okay, I think Corey Feldman's in The Goonies as well. Yeah.
Corey Haim,
because
they were a double act, weren't they? They're both in Lost Boys together, and then they did a couple of other ones, you know, as they got older. But the lighting as well, like the way that the light comes through the trees, is going back to that memory, like the concept of it being a memory movie, and like that golden haze, and they were so, because it's set on the East Coast, but it's I can't remember. It's Oregon, which is East Coast, but they filmed it on the West Coast, so the weather's a lot better. It's like California. I think they've.
But it, you know, obviously we grew up in sunny old England, where summers were hit and miss. You know,
but you remember those sunny days the most.
You don't remember the rainy days where you're like walking, you know, home from your friend's house and you're like absolutely freezing. I remember there's a place called Musebrookes Park in Rustington where I grew up. Well, I grew up in Northampton, but Rustington is like the other side. And there's a place called Musebrookes Park, and I can remember like what seemed like, you know, every single day just walking past this massive lake. Well, it's not a lake, it's a pond, but it felt like a massive lake, you know, every single day, and the sun just like glistening off the water. And then you're like, oh, that would have probably been like a space of 4 days with summertime, but it feels like every day of the summer. And you know, the way in which the weather has such an effect on telling this story. It becomes a different story if it's pissing down with rain or it's overcast. Whereas here it's like clear blue skies, you know, the greens, you know, the sheer colour on screen. Like the greens are so vibrant. So vibrant. And it's such like a picturesque look, you know, summertime. Like this feels just like summertime to me in a movie.
Like an archetypal summer holiday.
Yeah, you know. So this movie was made on a relatively kind of smallish budget. Well, certainly smallish by today's standards, of $8 million, which is just over 6.3 million quid.
Okay.
And that's equivalent today of about $24 million. So quite a low budget movie by today's standards.
Yeah, I wonder what they spent the money on. Maybe the train stunt and the, I guess, filming on location.
It's not going to be on actors' fees, you know, because I could imagine these kids probably weren't paid a lot of money. So probably it's going to be the boring stuff like the license to film in certain areas and the permits and all of that stuff.
Yeah, I think it's national park maybe.
You know, that kind of thing, which if you're not a filmmaker but you just watch movies, you're like, where's the money gone on this movie? Because it does look like they've just grabbed a camera and started filming.
I think it's filmed in Washington State. I remember now. It's
and when I say that, it looked like they just grabbed a camera and started filming. I don't mean that in any way derogatory, because it does just kind of feel like maybe there's a fifth friend who just never says anything, who's just filming everything, because it does feel like...
It makes me think of Super 8, which is another movie that reminds me of Stand By Me. And I guess, because a lot of that's done from the camcorder's perspective.
That's Spielberg, isn't it? Super 8.
Yeah, I think so. Definitely produced it.
Yeah. You know, Spielberg is another person who's like great at having, you know, kids in movies.
Yeah,
you know,
Hook.
E.T. and even Poltergeist has, you know, strong child characters. So yeah, so not a massive budget. It didn't do particularly well on its opening weekend, which I find quite surprising because I feel like I suppose it's who it's marketed at, really. Like, this is probably marketed far too much, you know, boys around this kind of age group. And
I remember the VHS cover was rubbish. Like, they've improved it over the years with the DVD releases, but it wasn't an inspiring cover, and it looked like it was a documentary about trains. But yeah, once they sort of like pulled out and showed the whole woodlands and just made it a bit more adventure.
Yeah.
Like more of an adventure movie, which I think it is. I think it's an adventure /
a bit more Famous Five type kind of feel to it.
Famous Five, but with cigarettes and stolen beers.
Yeah, edgy Famous Five, you know. Yeah, so it only made $251,000 back in its opening weekend, which you spent $8 million on a movie and that's all you're getting back. That's, you know, there's going to be some marketing executives and some money men who are having a bit of squeaky bum time being like, we're not making any money back on this. However, luckily, probably word of mouth more than anything, probably done this. It made back domestically to $52 million. So that's, you know...
Was that in the home video sector, do you think?
I think, well, this is just from the box office.
Oh, from the box office, right, okay.
So you know, this would have been at a time where movies probably had longer runs in cinemas, and actually, you know, cinemas at the time in the 80s were vastly different. You know, you didn't necessarily have, you know, many, if any, cinemas that had multiple screens in those days. So it would have been, we're going to show Stand By Me for the next 2-3 weeks, and that's all that's going to be on, or it will be on every day. So,
and it is a word of mouth. Like, I think, for most people, they've come across it through someone else's recommendation.
Yeah,
and it isn't a lot of people's top 10. I find it like, when I tell people it's my favorite film, because this is my favorite film of all time, the rest of the top 10 changes, but since 1988 or whenever I first saw
that's the thing with a favorite movie. Like, you can't, like, my favorite movie, as I mentioned many a time on the podcast, and people are probably getting sick and tired of hearing it, is The Prestige, which we both saw on the big screen not so long ago. And when you first watch a movie, you just know sometimes. Just know like this is sticking with me, and this is, you know, like, I think every time I go and see another Nolan movie, I'm like, is this going to be the one? And it just never is. I think Oppenheimer came close, but generally Sinners as well probably came close. But you just kind of know when a movie is going to be like, this is going to be the one that I'm going to be watching in 25 years time and being like, this movie is still amazing. You know, and I think that's probably is a product of when you watch this movie. You know, as an 8-year-old watching this, I 100% I would probably be saying the same as you, because this is just childhood and summertime encapsulated in a movie.
Great length as well. Like, for me, an hour and a half is like perfect length for a movie.
But that's what Jim, my brother-in-law, who also has done the podcast numerous times, that's what he always says, you know, 90 minutes is like the golden time of movies. You know, I think we are in a we've kind of gone back to what I would call the sort of 40s and 50s style of filmmaking, where films now are like big epics. And not every film needs to be a big epic, you know. I think the ones I thought, and also part 2s of movies now, you know, like Dune and Wicked,
which didn't need a part 2. That would have been so much better as a 1-part movie.
You know, I think Harry Potter was one of the first ones, and the Twilight franchise, first ones to really kind of start pushing that into more of an accepted. I just think it's a bit of a con. I'm like, you've shown me half the movie and I'm paying full price still.
It leaves you so unsatisfied at the end because it's a false ending. And
I mean, obviously some part 1s and part 2s are better at doing it than others. Some of them just literally stop halfway through the movie and you're like, well, this is just an interval now, just a prolonged interval of 5 years. You know?
Oh, I'm not sure about this special effect now. It looks a bit ropey.
That was the only thing that kind of dates it, really, is that slightly hokey shot, and it's only the one shot.
Yeah, because now it looks completely real. This is the train coming over the bridge on the Royal River.
Because obviously I thought I had a copy of Stand By Me, but I clearly don't, and this is on the Paramount Plus app, so I'm wondering if it's like a one of those touched up after it's been released versions, because this shot that we see, which is pretty much directly in front of them, the way they've done that is, let's get it up on my notes so I can properly
when they jump
justice.
off the bridge as well. Yeah, looks like green screen as well.
You can tell that's the only kind of two things, but the one shot that does look amazing in that is, so when Gordy and Vern are running towards the camera and you can see the train behind them, so the train was actually at the other end of the tracks or the trestle that they filmed it on, with Gordy and Vern towards the opposite end, so closer to the camera, and then they just used a 600mm long focus lens that, when it shot at the telephoto end, compressed the image so that it made it look like it was right behind them.
Like optical illusion.
And that looks like if you just showed me that, I'd be like, how did they film that? Are they actually that close to being run over by a train?
Like it,
That's exactly what it looks like, but obviously it's just perspective. And obviously those couple of shots with the old green screen or look a little bit ropey. But the one thing I would say is it is still quite nostalgic, because you can kind of say that's what they were doing at the time, so you can tell it's an 80s movie.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple of shots like that in The Goonies. I think there's definitely a few shots like that in it. That's what they were kind of doing at that time,
Yeah, before CGI.
And for me, I just love that I love this era of movies. So I'm kind of like, it does look a bit ropey, but I don't care because I like it.
Yeah, for me, 86 is golden era of cinema. There's so much good stuff around that time.
Yeah,
mid-80s.
I mean, I was born in the 90s, and there are some great movies in the 90s, but I forever find myself going back to 80s movies, I think.
It's just
particularly 80s horror for me is my jam. Very much my jam. So it made $52 million back at the domestic gross. So that is the equivalent today on a equivalent $24 million budget of $158 million.
Wow.
Which is, very, very successful movie, but by today's standards, in what we expect of today's movies, not that high. But when you consider that this isn't a Marvel movie, it's not a franchise movie, it's not a big action
it's movie. Stephen King, but it's not appealing necessarily to his fan base. It's not a Stephen
King horror, which is why I can't really understand. Like, you get writers sometimes who then go into a different genre, sometimes with a pseudonym or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that Stephen King hasn't become like a teen writer or that kind of, because he's so good at it.
Yeah.
He's so good at, two massive, well, this is obviously a novella, so not a full, fleshed out book.
In the same collection as two great other films that have been adapted from different seasons. Shawshank Redemption from the same collection, and Apt Pupil, which I think is really underrated. Ian McKellen playing a Nazi. It's genius. And Brad Renfro, I think, is the young lad in it.
Yeah.
But of those three, Shawshank is probably more popular, more successful.
I'm kind of annoyed that they dropped the full title of that, because the full title of the novella of that is Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption. Obviously, for those who've seen the Shawshank Redemption will know the reference there. But I'm surprised he you think of Stephen King and obviously you think of him as a horror writer, but he's not just a horror writer. Shawshank Redemption is
one of the best prison movies there is. I think that or Midnight Express are my two favourites.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Green Mile, which is also Stephen King. And off the back of this, Stephen King loved Rob Reiner's direction so much, he then got him to direct Misery.
Yeah, and I think Stephen King said that Stand By Me is the best on-screen depiction of one of his novels.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Whether or not that is still the case,
yeah.
But certainly at the time, and as we know, Stephen King hasn't always enjoyed adaptations of his work. The Shining, which we recorded an episode of that not so long ago, me and Gaz. He's in no way, shape or form is he a fan of The Shining.
Oh, because he preferred the TV remake.
He preferred the TV show, yeah. So he wasn't a fan of Kubrick's version of The Shining. I don't think he was a particular fan of The Running Man. Okay, that was based on him. What was it, Richard? He wrote that under a pseudonym. Can't think of what the pseudonym he wrote.
Is it? Yeah.
And obviously that's been remade recently, but he wasn't a fan
Richard
of
Kimball? No, that's The Fugitive.
That's a deep cut. Yeah, so he's not exactly a person who he reminds me a little bit of Alan Moore in terms of, for anybody who doesn't know who Alan Moore is, he's a graphic novel writer and comic book writer. Watchmen, From Hell, The Boys, I think he does as well. I don't think he does do The Boys, but yeah, Watchmen, and he hates Watchmen. I think there's another one he's done, and he keeps saying that my comic books should not be made into movies because it's a different medium.
Yeah.
I don't think he has a particular, a version of his work on screen that he thinks is good.
Mm-hmm.
So, to have that kind of praise from Stephen King in relation to this is quite steep. And I think, if the person, you get writers who kind of just, I think at the moment it seems to be every Netflix drama is a Harlan Coben one.
Yeah.
True. And I quite like Harlan Coben as a writer, but it got to a point where I was like, oh, this is now just the next, is Harlan Coben just Netflix now, And
is he writing his novels with a view to them being on Netflix?
Yeah.
I have felt that with some of his...
it's another drama of Richard Armitage again, which I don't have a problem with Richard Armitage, but he's in pretty much every one of those things.
Oh, it'd be nice to see him on stage. He's going to be playing King Herod in Jesus Christ Superstar.
Yeah,
I'm excited about that. I'm seeing him.
Along with,
Boy George, Jesse Ferguson... I can't remember who the other actors they've got. Oh, Leighton Williams. Yeah, it's a real eclectic mix.
Yeah.
That we're now watching the film within the film, or the story.
The story that
Gordy's written. About the pie eating contest.
It's telling the rest of the thing, and it's such a hard thing to do is to tell a story within a story, and it still be, legible and not be confusing, but everything is just so simple, and not simple in a way of like it's not difficult to do, but it just makes sense in so many ways.
Because we were talking about like telling a story as kids, and they're around the campfire and they want Gordy to tell this story, and they're kind of annoyed about how it ends, because I think Teddy wants it to end violently, but it just ends in a Bath-O-Rama, so everyone's like throwing up pies on each other, and it's like gross. I don't know, this was before gross out comedies were a thing.
Yeah.
And again, this was another thing that I loved about the movie, was just like everyone's covered in vomit. It makes you feel really sick, but we hadn't really seen anything at this point in history.
And what's great about that little sequence is that it's totally illogical, because you've got the 5 pie eaters who are barfing up this deep purple blackberry pie vomit.
Yeah.
But then everybody who's watching the pie eating contest is also doing that. So it's like, have they just been eating all of those pies as well? It doesn't. But it's that thing of like, when you're kids and you are sitting around a campfire, or sitting with a bunch of mates and you're telling a story, these stories aren't going to be complex and logical. They're just going to be, I'm going to tell this story because that's what my mates want to hear, and it's pretty cool, And
it reminded me of the drawings I would used to do in my English book as a kid as well, like the, I don't know, graphic, people getting crushed to death, or I don't know, just a bit bloody and a bit OTT.
The things that, as kids just, make you laugh or make you excited or scare you or whatever it may be, And it is really difficult to get that right, because obviously this was written by an adult. Okay, yes, a very good writer as an adult, But to get that authentic, time capsule period of time in your life where you are finding yourself as a human being is so difficult. And I've seen numerous films try to do that and not really be successful at it. Even films like Jumanji, which I love.
Yeah.
There are points where you're like, it's trying to do a certain thing and it's not quite able to do it in the same level of success that this does it.
I think because so much of the dialogue is inconsequential at the moment. They're talking about could Mighty Mouse beat up Superman?
Yeah.
Or do you notice on Wagon Train they never get anywhere?
What is Goofy anyway? And I love that bit because there's all these different conversations, but they just keep returning to what animal is Goofy? Like that's the sticking point for these friends. Is like, oh yeah, what? Like,
Mickey's a mouse, Pluto's a dog. So what is Goofy? And I still don't know the answer to that.
But
because he drives a car and he talks, whereas Pluto's just barks and is.
I think he's a dog, but he's obviously a higher evolution of dog than Pluto. That's what I always thought. But yeah, it's that thing of there are those things. It's almost like that in joke that you keep returning to.
Mm-hmm.
Like how many times have you been sitting in a classroom and there's that joke that everybody does. Like at the moment it's the whole 6-7 thing.
Oh yeah.
Which as an adult I do not understand. But if I was a kid now, that would be the thing you just say all the time and you get a laugh because you know you're going to get a laugh.
And wind the teacher up.
And,
I guess days before Wikipedia as well, so they couldn't even look that up. So that would be something that would always annoy you. Like if there was something you couldn't find the answer to, one of life's great questions. And the guns come out again. I forgot it came out at this point. So they're scared in the woods.
It's not like a massively focused thing. Like it's more just a bit of a crutch almost. Like we've got this if we're okay, but it's not like the forefront of the
action
the action. Yeah,
but it's building the tension of like when you go camping as kids that. It is bloody scary at night when there's nothing else around apart from the sound of some owls.
And something that as simple as like we were walking home when we went to see Grease 2 the other night, and there was clearly a fox. What I thought was it sounded like he was killing some form of bird.
Okay,
and the noises you hear are just like that is freaky. And if you're in the woods as a kid. And you hear something like that, or even just the breaking of a branch or whatever it is, you're immediately like, oh, that's not going to be an owl. That's going to be a man-eating killer owl, that's going to, hunt me until I get home. But, or until the sun comes up because only scary things happen in the dark, you know?
And you kind of wind each other up, but at the same time, you're making yourself even more scared.
Yeah.
I remember with my friends, it was probably like 2 years after we'd seen the film, we were out in the woods and we stumbled across someone's den. Like maybe it was a person without a home was living there, but it had lots of weird, like, I don't know, slightly like sacrificial altar kind of thing, and I'm just probably the most scared I've ever been in my life. As we desperately wanted to find clues of who lived there, but at the same time we're terrified they would return and we would get captured by them.
And it's the less you know, the more mysterious things are and the more mythical things get and the more the rumor kind of, and that's what I kind of was saying earlier about like, is there a body? Like we see a body towards the end obviously, but up until that point, they're just 4 friends in the woods searching for something.
Yeah.
And that thing they could never find, they may never find. And even if they do find it, is it just not they found it because they were looking for it rather than it actually being there? It's that thing of, everybody has that rumor in their town or that thing that nobody goes near or that place is a bit scary. And it's the more people kind of feed into that, the more
it spirals out of control.
Out of control before you know it. Like I always remember there was a place where I grew up and I don't know, I heard it was like a care home for people who had learning difficulties, but it was right opposite these tennis courts where I used to play tennis in the summer. And every now and again you'd hear like a scream or something. and it would be like, what the fuck is going on over there? And I don't think there was anything sinister going on, but because it was that thing of like, I don't even think because it was in the opposite direction to where we all lived, we never went past it. It was just always kind of like this thing at the end of the road near the tennis court.
Okay,
so you'd hear it every now and again, and then you could be like, well, I'm going this way, so I'm not going to go there. And it just kind of, your mind plays tricks on you and starts like wandering in places, and you're just like, actually, it might have just been, somebody had the TV on a bit too loud. It might not have even been, a care home or anything. It might have just been somebody had the windows open, but because you're kids and like your
imaginations,
you're not with your parents or with adults who are there to tell you, oh no, that's silly, that this is what it is, or whatever it is. You just you tell these stories and you tell these these narratives to your mates or to yourself, and before you know it, they've gone in this completely different place. And I think this film for me kind of sums up the idea of like searching for something, like in the physical sense, they're searching for the body,
and they want to get all the glory for finding it and be on the papers. But then once they find it, they decide they're just going to make an anonymous call and just call it in, and not, because they realize they've seen death, I guess, face to face, and they realize it's not as glamorous or not as exciting as they thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it's the mundaneness of this particular thing, and it's more that it's the thrill of the chase rather than the end result. And I feel like they're also like searching for their place in the world, as you probably are at that age.
Yeah.
They're searching for their friendships with other people. Like,
we don't really hear much about Vern's life, and so it seems like he's got the best home life, because Chris has got abusive alcoholic parents. Gordy's lost his older brother, and his parents are horrible to him, as you see in the flashbacks. I really feel sorry for Gordy, because they're all obviously grief-stricken, his family, but they're really taken out on that poor kid. And then obviously Teddy's dad's in prison, or he's in the army. He burnt his ear off, they say, which is pretty horrific. I don't think they ever mentioned Teddy's mum. And then, I guess Vern's the only one we don't really know much about.
Yeah.
And I remember reading I did a deep dive on the cast a few years ago, just the secondary players. The kid that played Ray Brower, the body, who does nothing apart from like look dead.
Slightly cross-eyed as well.
He's now like, I think special effects, I want to say. He's quite senior in special effects in Hollywood, and has worked on like 200 movies. So I don't know if this was his first break, and he was like nice to have around on set. Was patient about being covered in leaves for hours on end. And so
it's probably this was interesting. I think this was one of the first movies that kind of installed kind of more kind of safety precautions and more rules and regulations in regards to child actors.
Oh wow, okay.
Because I think this was the first sort of movie with child actors since Twilight Zone.
Okay.
The movie, which obviously that had that horrific accident.
Yeah.
Where, two kids and the lead star were killed in that helicopter crash.
Mm-hmm.
So this was suddenly they had rules and regulations, and apparently it was a bit of a pressing point for Rob Reiner, because obviously coming from a world where you didn't have that to now you do have that, it's going to be a bit, why can't we do this? Well, because there's these new rules now, like, we didn't have them yesterday, and it's like,
Wonder if they were herbal cigarettes then, because
they probably were. Like, it's one of those things where I'm like, they look so realistic. Like, are they actually just smoking? Like,
it was even shocking in 1989 to see kids smoking like that. My parents had been, like, my mum smoked at that age. But I showed it to my 10-year-old niece recently, thinking she'd love it, 'cause she loves Stranger Things, and I think there's a lot of parallels.
Yeah.
Obviously they're inspired by King, aren't they? The makers of that.
Yeah.
But she immediately saw them smoking, and she just lost interest, and she was like, it's disgusting.
It's completely, like, it's almost like when you go back and watch things where people are smoking in pubs. It just looks weird, it looks wrong, or like people smoking on planes, or anywhere really in a public place that isn't, in a designated smoking area. It looks wrong now after so long of it not being, whereas obviously at the time, I mean, maybe they're already all smoking anyway. They went, well, if they're already all smoking, we might as well have it on camera,
I think it's just very 1950s. It's the boomer generation.
Absolutely. I think everybody at that age probably would have at least tried a cigarette.
In Grease as well, and Grease 2, which...
And to be honest, in films like Grease, the smoking is the least of the problems for the age of the performers,
But I do love the scene in Grease 2 where he's smoking and then he swallows it because the teacher catches him.
Great. That is great.
I always found that a shocking watch.
So we've touched upon some of the actors' names, but let's just go through that. We have playing Gordy LaChance, we have Will Wheaton. Playing Chris Chambers, we have River Phoenix. Playing Teddy DeChamp, we have Corey Feldman. Playing Vern Tessio, we have Jerry O'Connell. Playing Ace Merrill, we have Kiefer Sutherland. Playing Adult Gordy, or the narrator, we have Richard Dreyfuss. We have Denny LaChance, as played by John Cusack, in a very early role.
He'd done Reiner's previous...
Yeah, he'd done The Shore Thing a year prior, but... certainly one of the earlier roles of John Cusack. Mr. LaChance is Marshall Bell, who I recognise immediately from Total Recall. Mrs. LaChance is Frances.
He always plays mean guys, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's got that kind of look of like drill instructor.
Yeah, he's like almost the secondary antagonist in this film because he's Gordy's abusive dad, and so Gordy's getting it from all angles. He's getting it from the school bullies.
And I think that's probably obviously because he's the narrator later on in life and positioned more as the main character, but you do get that kind of, he's the one who has the most fulfilled arc. Like you see him go through, he's towards the beginning, he's just doing this for a bit of an escape, and then there's a point where he's really sort of like sort of sitting with that knowledge of knowing that his parents are treating him like shit because his brother's died, and that's got nothing to do with him, but it's that thing of he's just like, there's that flashback sequence, or that dream sequence, where his dad says to him, it should have been you. And we've all been in those positions if we've got siblings where you feel like your parents are taking your sibling's side. Obviously that's an extreme version of it.
So the bit that always gets me emotional is when Chris turns to him and says, "I wish to hell I was your father," and he's like taking that paternal role, even though he's maybe only a year older. But I just find that so emotive, and it's just a turning point for Gordy. I think he needs that wake up call that he's kind of wasting his life away, and he has got potential to be a great writer, which he does become in years. We don't quite know the level of his success, but he's got a really nice home computer for 1986.
Yeah, and obviously it's still relatively new because he hasn't learned the ability to save. He just turns the screen off, and anybody who's ever written any kind of Word document of any substantial word count will know save as you go, because otherwise it will disappear. But yeah, so it's that that relationship between Gordy and Chris is the kind of the anchor, I think, of the movie.
Yeah.
Because they feel as close to as brothers as you can kind of get.
Yeah.
And you kind of get the sense that Vern and Teddy don't really get on. They're kind of there because maybe they're more friends with like Gordy.
Well, he's just calling him the world's biggest pussy right now. Teddy's calling Vern. Yeah, they've definitely got a fractious relationship, and now he's dunking him under the...
Yeah. I think, again, we've all been in those friendship groups where we're only really in the friendship group because we like one or two of the people, but there's always that one where you're like, you're just a knobhead, I don't like you. And they probably think the same about you, In another friendship group, you're that dude who nobody likes, but the one person who who is the leader of the group or the focal point of the group, he likes you, so you're in the group.
Yeah, that's true.
We've all kind of, been... I think we've probably all been every single character in different groups, you know, we've all been the leader or the, you know, compared to some groups, you're the bad guy or the slightly crazy one, you know.
Yeah.
In other ones, you've been the one who's a goody two shoes. In other ones, you've been the one who's slightly annoying. In the other one, you've been the one who's always getting the piss taken out of them. You know, everybody can, I think, can relate to all of the characters here, because I think we've all been each character at some point in our lives in some form of friendship group. You know,
I remember finding this scene really gross when they're covered in the leeches, and I don't think I'd ever heard of what a leech was at that point. And it made me phobic for life, really, of any kind of open water swimming, or that I was worried that leeches would come in.
Yeah, it's leeches are a weird ass thing anyway. Like, and this doesn't do anything for your fears of them at all, especially, you know, towards the end of the scene where Gordy, you know, as a guy looking down and seeing a leech where something else should be would be perhaps one of the worst things you could probably imagine after getting out of a lake of some sort, you know. Everybody.
And he plays this so brilliantly. It's pretty understated considering what's happening to him.
There's no screaming. It's just, oh shit, man. Like, it's almost like, it's like that moment in a war movie where the guy knows he's dead. It's that point. He's like, oh shit, I'm done for.
Is that maybe like the parody of it? Because you can see Corey Feldman's dog tags. Maybe that was what Reiner was thinking at this moment. It is, and now he faints like he's been fatally shot. It's genius.
Yeah, it is just. It manages to sort of like encapsulate it, your fears as a kid in every way, like your dreams, your fears, and everything is here. Like we keep going back to this point of it being so authentic, like really hard to achieve. You know, it feels like this was written by a 12-year-old, and I mean that from the sense of everything as a 12-year-old you would kind of want from a story. You have in there, like you have these weird ass rumors, and you have the bullies that you kind of want to see them get their comeuppance. You have the friendships, you have the highs, you have the lows.
It makes you wonder when King wrote this. Maybe he had it in his notepad for years and years. And it wasn't
I think he was saying it was sort of semi-biographical. Like, I don't think he was saying that this happened to him.
But this was the landscape where he grew up. This is kind of.
I think he himself is kind of Gordy. I think, you know, and I think he was kind of writing from his experiences, and obviously, you know, a little bit of poetic license probably was used, but so it does feel so authentic, and you know, the reception from this, both with audiences and critics, highlighted that immediately. You know, if you go onto IMDb, it's got an 8.1 user score, which is pretty darn high. You know, usually I think if you're in the sevens, then you're a decent movie.
Yeah, like 7.2 upwards.
Anything above 8, you're getting into top 250.
Yeah, I think it did make the Empire's top 100. Like, maybe in the early 2000s, there's been a lot more films made now, and I don't know if it's still there, but I was really pleased to see it in the top 100 at that time.
It has a 4.1 on Letterboxd.
Nice.
You know, which is a pretty decent score. Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 92% critic score and a 94% audience score.
Wow, okay.
Which shows, usually, I say it a lot, but you get movies that either hit well with critics, but not so much with audiences, or vice versa. You get audiences love it, but critics hate it. And this one is one of those movies that both love it.
Yeah.
And, you know, one of the quotes I picked out from Roger Ebert was, "Stand By Me is a film of rare and delicate beauty, a story of 4 boys growing up a little too fast. It is not really about finding a dead body, but finding out about themselves and about the moment in life when childhood begins to slip away forever." And that encapsulates everything about this movie. Like, it's a movie where nothing really happens, but so much happens at the same time.
Yeah.
It's not about what they're actually doing. It's about their experiences along that journey, and about how they, you know, interact with each other, and how their friendships
in the world
go.
As well. Like, it seems like every adult's against them, which it does feel like when you're a teenager. I think that's, for me, that's the beauty of it is, and makes it so universal to different generations. Like my mother-in-law, this is her favorite film as well, and she grew up in the 50s. But anyone that's been a teenager can relate to these characters. I think when you feel like the whole world's against you and you've only got your friends, and even that's a complicated relationship because they're all kind of taking the mick out of each other. And but the core relationship, like you said before, is Gordy and Chris, and they're the ones that would do anything for each other. So it's quite sad that they do drift apart later in life, but it is realistic.
Yeah.
And with my cousins I told you about that I watched this for the first time, we drifted apart. Like I went to university, and then the times I saw them became less and less, and now I see them every 5 years or so.
Yeah. Well, it's what happens, isn't it? I remember my best friends from primary school. We both went to the same secondary school, but we were in different tutor groups, so therefore we just weren't as close as we were.
Mm-hmm.
And you think when you leave, when you are in those friendships and you go, this person is my best friend and these guys are my best friends, and you think that is going to last forever, and then life happens. And it's not. I think it's sometimes it's viewed upon like this massive like conscious decision, but sometimes it's just happens. Life gets in the way. People move away, people get married, people have kids, whatever it may be. And suddenly your perspective on things change. And that's a really bold move to do that as well, because you kind of would think there would be this, because there isn't a happy ending here at all. It's quite a somber, quite a tragic ending, and it would have been so easy to put this happy ending. Put this kind of, and now I'm getting married. I'm going to
Chris's wedding.
I'm going to be Chris's best man, and this is part of my best man speech.
Mm-hmm.
It would be so easy to do that, and that's. I'm not saying that that's a bad ending. I think that'd be a good ending, but I think it's more powerful to kind of show the light and shade of that time in your life where these friendships are the most important thing in the world to these characters.
And it is a film about grief, because he's grieving his brother, he's then grieving Chris later on, like who dies in the future, grieving their childhood, like how they can't piss around anymore, they need to focus and knuckle down and go in their different directions. I guess the grief they found now, discovering the body and seeing how messed up the body is, and it's not as glamorous as they thought it was going to be. They thought it was going to be like something in a film, but actually it's really the kids
almost like they were expecting some sort of like congratulation party, like well done, you found the body, guys, you're amazing. And it isn't that. It's just it's just is what it is.
And how brutal death can be, and how like unglamorized compared to how they've seen it in the movies or in the comics and things.
It's not this grand moment, it's just there.
Probably smells bad. Like the way they depict it is really grotesque, and it's not something I'd really seen in cinema before. Like in horror, like you see a lot of freshly killed bodies, but you never see one that's been there for 2 weeks or whatever. This body's been there, and it's quite visceral, that moment.
I think there's a really nice exchange towards the end of the movie where he's just finished writing and doesn't save his work, and his kids come in and says, "Are we going to be going?" Or sorry, his kid and his friend walks in, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I'll be right there." And he's like, "But you said that half an hour ago." And then his friend's just like, "Oh God." He's like, "Sorry, my dad gets like this when he's writing." And it's that he's now become that thing that he was obviously it looks like his relationship with his kids are better than with his own father. But then he's kind of gone into that position of being that same adult figure of like, the adults are just holding us as kids back. Like, why can't the adults just let us, be free and everything, and he's become that. And I think there is so much of this movie which is kind of showing that, that transition. This is a transitional time of these boys' lives. It's a transitional kind of time in cinema as well, and and in America in 1959, where it was kind of that American Pie,
on the cusp
middle
of
America, was starting to kind of wear off. A few years later, they're going into Vietnam, and there's that kind of almost rebellious kind of side to teenagers. Whereas, Grease as a movie is very much in this sort of time frame, and there isn't a lot of rebellion there as such. It's more, the rebellion is more like trying to be cool.
Yeah.
10 years later, the rebellion is like, now it's much more political kind of rebellion, and what is our government doing, and that sort of thing. So this whole movie is showing a transitional period of time, both in physical time and also in a person's life sort of time.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of there's not really any political commentary. I don't think any presidents or anything are mentioned at all in the film. So it's interesting in that respect that you do get the sense of the era it's set, but there's no specific historical references apart from, I guess, the pop culture references that really place, and the music as well. The soundtrack, I mean, is incredible. I love the soundtrack of this. The song that they sing when they're the theme tune to Paladin, and that's like something like does trigger nostalgia as like theme tunes, and that's
it's interesting because that they were actually sued for that, and successfully sued by the composer of that theme because they didn't ask his permission to use it. So I bet they're looking back and going, "Why the fuck did we do that? Why didn't we either ask him, or why didn't we use like something of somebody who already died? What the fuck?"
Or do a parody of it.
Like, it's funny how music does place this movie. Obviously you've got like Mr. Sandman is one of the songs in there, which immediately takes you to a particular time. You hear it and you go, right, okay, this is Mad Men type thing, that era.
And Buddy Holly, Roller Coaster, and Lollipop.
Yeah.
Bum, bum, bum.
Songs that as soon as you hear from the first note, you're like, right, okay, I'm in a diner somewhere in Middle America, and
rock and roll kind of ties in with the fashions. Like here, Ace's shirt's just incredible.
Yeah, I can pick up a hamburger and fries for under $1. That's the kind of time that you're in.
But not with Vern's dime or whatever he brings as a contribution. Can buy anything with that.
There's that brilliant bit where they all get back to town after they found the body, and it's like now they're again. It feels like that's the end of summer. Whether they say this is like early September, so this might be the last couple of days of summer.
Yeah.
And they say, "Oh, I'll see you back at school," sort of thing. And as Vern is leaving, he just stops and goes, "Huh, a penny," and it's just like that. Just encapsulates Vern's like innocence.
Yeah,
like
it ties back to how he hears about the body in the first place. He's looking for his penny jar.
Yeah,
he's buried under the porch. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, such a good callback to the start.
Yeah,
and talking about Richard Dreyfuss, like his narration for me is what like makes this movie extra special. Like he's just got,
and it's the thing that I always forget is in this movie. Like it's because you don't necessarily remember the narration. You remember remember the kids and the scenery, and
it's quite intermittent. It's not like some narrators that are constant in the film.
Yeah,
he just drops in very occasionally, but says really poignant things.
And it is just like narration as a tool. I think can be overused.
Yeah.
But it's used sparingly here to the point where it doesn't get in the way of telling the story, which is obviously the point of having a narrator, is to help tie up the loose ends. And, it's almost used as a segue from one scene to another scene, And this film is shot undeniably well. Like we've just gone past it, but the shot where Kiefer Sutherland finds the kids with the body, and he's like, right, get out of the way, we're taking the body now. And which, when he says it, is so much more sinister than when they say they're going to go and find the body.
Yeah,
because it's more like, why, what, like, it just has this much more.
I remember the injustice
sinister.
When I first watched that, about thinking about school bullies that would come and steal your lunch money or something, and how unfair that was, and just the injustice of it. And so it's such a good. Oh, there's Vern picking the penny up. It is a good twist when the gun comes back and Gordy does a stick up basically and makes him run away, and the repetition of the "suck my fat one, you dime store hood," which was someone says as an insult to him earlier
which
on
has
in the
influenced me without even knowing it, because I always say, like, when something annoys me, I just go, "Oh, suck a fat one." Like, it's just a phrase, and I thought that was a relatively like new term, but apparently not. This was, a term obviously in 1986 that potentially might have been a phrase in
from the 50s. I think it was, and like Greece used a lot of those phrases as well that then became part of the 80s kids lexicon.
Vernacular. It's when what I was saying about Keith Sutherland and when he comes and tries to take the glory away from them, and you've got Gordy and he just shoots the gun and then he pulls it down and points it at Keith Sutherland. The way that's shot just looks so good. It's almost like that moment where in movies where you get like almost like I was kind of expecting from Grease 2 the other day, where you get that moment where the cool person's arrived and there's like this real big focus on this person arriving. It felt like that, and it's almost like because you don't really see Kiefer Sutherland or his goons get their comeuppance. It's more implied. Like, what you probably don't see is the fact that probably when they go back to school, they're all going to get beaten up.
Yeah, Chris's brother's going to beat him up at home.
Because they're not going to have a gun in school, are they? And, that kind of, I think even...
That is kind of a trope of like high school coming of age films where they stand up to the bully and then the bully just is humiliated or becomes weak, but that isn't really what happens in real life.
Yeah, I think as well in the book, I think that's the only change they may have made, I think, or it may have been in the original screenplay, but the ending was when they get back to town, they get beaten up by Kiefer Sutherland.
Oh, really?
And everything, which either way, I think it works much better here because it's that melancholy, and because it's Richard Dreyfuss telling the story. It's almost like he wouldn't necessarily remember getting the beaten up bit.
Yeah,
well, he would, but if he's telling the story, he would probably more focus on the positives of it. And I really like as well the line that he types in his story. When he says, "Although I hadn't seen him in more than 10 years, I'll miss him forever." And then he types the final line where it's like, we all have friends like that. Jesus, I'm just waiting for it to come up on screen because I can't remember it off by heart.
Can I do my Richard Dreyfuss impression?
Of course you can. This is a podcast which can have impressions.
So he's trying to figure out what the last line should be. He smiles to himself in his plaid shirt, and he's about to type and then delete it forever.
And is that weird? That is that very intimate look straight down the barrel.
I never had friends later on, the ones I had when I was 12. Jesus, does anyone? ?
Yeah, I love that last line, and I also like to think that this is perhaps a prequel, and actually, where he's taking his kids is to the aquarium to show him some sharks, and
that's when Stand By Me 2 jumps the shark.
Yeah, Stand By Me 2 is actually the events directly before the start of Jaws. The kids he's playing with are unfortunately the kids who die at the start of Jaws.
I wonder what those screenplay guys, never heard of them before.
Yeah, I think it's strange because you would immediately think they would have more credits than they do because I don't actually know what other credits they have. Let's have a quick look because we didn't go through the crew, did we? Really? But so obviously directed by Rob Reiner.
Princess Bride as well was one we didn't mention from him.
Yes, that was the one, the in between one. Yeah, a run of films where some people long for one of those films.
Yeah,
and he got all of them. Mm-hmm. Crazy. So the writers of the screenplay were Reynold Gideon and Bruce A. Evans, who the only two movies that I think were notable, and even then they're not massively notable, were a movie called Starman in 1984 and a 2007 movie called Mr. Brooks with Kevin Costner where he plays a serial killer.
Oh, I think I remember Starman. Is that Jeff Bridges maybe, or Jeff?
I think it might be, yeah. obviously based on the work by Stephen King, who, if you don't know any of other Stephen King's work, he's done stuff like The Shining, The Shawshank Redemption, that we've mentioned numerous times already.
A lot of my favourite films. And I always think in history, like in 100 years' time, people will talk about Stephen King like they do about Shakespeare. Like, he was so prolific. Like, he's still writing stuff now, churning it out, perhaps. But when he was at his height of his powers, like...
Maybe in 100 years' time, we'll have people in theatres doing Stephen King monologues rather than Shakespeare monologues. I would love that to death. More so. I've never been a massive Shakespeare fan. I can't get my head around it. I'm much more here for Stephen King.
Yeah, me too.
The producers were Andrew Schneiderman, who had also worked on things like Princess Bride and When Harry Met Sally with Rob Reiner.
Oh, so they were before Stand By Me. Okay.
Yeah. Princess Bride, was 87.
Okay.
When Harry Met Sally was 89, so both of those were afterwards.
But all ran concurrently, didn't they? Yeah.
Executive producer Martin Schaefer, who went on to work on Sleepless in Seattle, The American President. The composer was Jack Nitzsche, who's perhaps most well known for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and An Officer and a Gentleman. Cinematographer was Thomas Del Ruth, Breakfast Club, Running Scared.
Oh, another one of my favourite films,
yeah,
Breakfast Club.
I love The Breakfast Club. Casting director, Jane Jenkins and Janet Hershenson. E.T., The Extraterrestrial, Back to the Future, Home Alone. So, very, very established filmmakers in their own right.
And all kind of intrinsic to that 80s.
That 80s like golden age Spielberg. Real proper cinema, as I call it.
Yeah. But
brings us on quite nicely to kind of like further watching. And I think we've probably mentioned a fair few that I've picked out. So, as I say, I said it at the top of the episode, the film this is most closely resembles for me is Stephen King's It.
Yeah.
The original mini-series, because it's not technically
even some of the costumes look similar, like these striped shirts and things, and obviously
that is...
Derry and Castle Rock are really similar looking.
That's a story that is centred around a group of friends who are grown up and then start reminiscing about what happened when they were kids.
And this invisible threat or this sense of foreboding until Pennywise appears.
Yeah, and so obviously the similarities there are quite clear.
Another one I thought of was Sleepers. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah, Sleepers
especially the first half, like the first hour or so, but before they grow up, it feels like it's a similar era, but they're in the city.
Yeah.
But the friendship dynamics for me are really similar, and it's almost
it also has that that friendship kind of anchor.
Mm-hmm. But with a dark twist, or what happens when the friendship's put under pressure when they kill the hot dog guy by accident. Yeah.
Yeah. Another one I thought of was Dead Poets Society. That sort of, coming of age sort of time in your life where you're trying to find who you are.
Yeah.
All of everything you experience at that time is so much more kind of intrinsic into becoming who you are later on in life.
Mm-hmm.
Another Rob Reiner movie that I think everybody should watch, also a great play, is A Few Good Men.
You can't handle the truth.
There's a great story where Rob Reiner was basically he said to Jack Nicholson in that famous speech, he said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to film everybody else first, and then I'll do you last. So if you just go through it and, we get everybody else reacting. And he does the first sort of 3 or 4 takes. I think he does Cruise, then he does Kevin Bacon, then he does whoever. And every time Jack Nicholson is giving it. And Rob Reiner goes up to him and just says, do you want to just steady it down just because we're not filming you at the moment.
Uh-huh.
And apparently Jack Nicholson goes, Rob, you don't get it. I love to act, like that. And then apparently every single time they went through that scene,
he was getting bigger and bigger.
He done the exact same, same intensity, same emotion. And it was he just nailed it every single time.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's important, especially with screen acting. You can kind of mark it when the camera's not on you. But I think that's probably what makes Nicholson so great, is because people probably loved acting opposite him because he was always giving it the full beans, even when it wasn't
I think
mic'd
we've both probably been in those positions where maybe a co-star or somebody who's standing in for somebody isn't giving it it'll be all right on the night type
just
kind
marking
of
it through,
thing. And it, sometimes that can be sort of a bit of a put off because you're trying to find where a character is. And so, I think there's a video of like the screen, sorry, not the screen, of the kind of read through of one of the last episodes of Breaking Bad. And Bryan Cranston is just giving it everything
So when everything starts to fall apart and all the secrets
I think it's just one of the latter episodes.
Yeah.
I don't know the specific bits in the thing, but everybody is giving it. And then you get Dean Norris, who plays Hank.
Yeah.
And he's literally just like saying, yeah, I know what you mean. There's something like that. And it's like Bryan Cranston is like, he is Heisenberg over there. And then Dean Norris is the science, like literally like giving it nothing. And it's like, obviously people work in different ways, but it's just like, if that was me, I'd be like, do you want to like give it a little bit now, Dean? Because, we've got Heisenberg over here. It's just crazy.
But circling back to Stand By Me, I think that's what makes River Phoenix's performance possibly the best child performance ever on screen. And that's what elevates everyone else, because even when he's talking about the mundane stuff, he's still so truthful and so committed to the bit. And like when he gets emotional and cries, when he gets angry, like the veins on his neck are popping out, and he's not marking it at any point. Like it's full. Yeah,
I think you're not watching River Phoenix. You're watching Chris
Chambers. Yeah,
and there aren't a lot of actors who are able to do that. There are actors who get to a point where, a little bit like Jack Nicholson, where as good as he is, you are watching Jack Nicholson.
It's as good as it gets.
It's very difficult to separate Jack Nicholson, the actor, from Jack Nicholson, the person who's playing the character.
Yeah.
Tom Cruise is another one who very good in most things, but you can't get past the fact it's Tom Cruise.
Yeah, a lot of Hollywood actors are like. I think when I went to drama school, they said something about screen actors being charlatans, but I think he was talking about the De Niros, the Pacinos, but who have like later on in their careers have broadened out and taken more risks. But yeah, it's funny though, because Jack Nicholson is one of my favorite ever actors, but he is, like you say,
you can't get past the fact it's Jack Nicholson.
Yeah,
and to be fair, that's probably why you're enjoying the movie, because it's Jack Nicholson.
Yeah, he's got that intensity.
Obviously, you get some actors where it's like the opposite, where like,
for me, it's Nicolas Cage for that. I can't bear it. Like, I feel like it
has to be the right movie for Nicolas Cage.
Yeah. I mean, there's been a couple of exceptions.
The Wicker Man is. I love the original.
What was the one with the where is the ambulance driver? I think that was.
That's 8mm.
Yeah.
That was Joel Schumacher directed that. And then
the great director.
The last thing I mentioned for further watching was Stranger Things, which you've both mentioned, and The Goonies as well, is another.
The Sandlot I thought of as well.
Yeah,
I think that's I can't remember. It's a similar era, and it's about kids going on an adventure, but I can't remember much else about it. But I remember seeing it and going, "Oh, I love this," because it's just like Stand By Me. So that was the other one I was thinking of. A real classic.
So that's been another episode. We hope you've enjoyed listening to us rattle on. If you have any questions, recommendations, or general thoughts, you can send them to buryourboneswith@gmail.com, and we will try to give you a shout out on the podcast. We have been Bury Our Bones with Cinema, the guys who dig up the films that refuse to stay buried. Be a one-button job. Boom, 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 toom, toom, toom.
I have a terrible tendency to just scroll about and like, you're talking when we're doing it. I still find it slightly distracting.
It's a bit weird, but I think it's a bit weird. But I suppose
maybe if you listen to it back, see if it sounds. I was like, I'm gonna have to stop it. You're listening back like.
Good job I observed that well, wasn't it?